the car guys, and welcome to the Ferrari 488 Pista Spider. Yes, that's right. I'm going to give you a full update on what it's like to own and drive and enjoy this fabulous special Ferrari, and then I'm going to answer all your questions about this car. So if that sounds like your special brand of vodka, let's get on with it. Welcome everyone to the 488 Pista Spider, specifically my 488 Pista Spider, and many of you will have seen my whole journey with this car, right from the moment where Jason and I spec'd it in Italy, had a lot of fun doing that, through to the agonizing wait, and then the collection day, and then of course my epic road trip through France and Italy. This car's now done 2,936 miles, which I suspect puts it in the upper echelon of 488 Pista Spider mileages. And as you can see, I'm not afraid to drive it in not that optimum conditions. It is 5 degrees outside, it's a little bit slippery, and obviously there's lots of gunk on the roads because it's winter. One of the great things about modern Ferraris is that you truly can use them every day and not really worry about the conditions that you're driving in. They will pretty much take anything. Could you legitimately use this as a daily driver? Absolutely, yes you could. It will start every time, it will get you where you need to go, and it's a lot more comfortable than you'd think, considering this is the track-orientated version. Now remember, this is part of a noble bloodline of V8 performance Ferraris, stretching all the way back to the 348 GT Competizione and moving through the epic Challenge Stradale, the 430 Scuderia, the 458 Speciale, and now of course the 488 Pista. But of course this is even more special because this is the convertible version, which means it's part of the 16M, the 458 Speciale Aperta, and now the 488 Pista Spider. Opening that roof gives you a much greater appreciation of the engine of these cars, which was especially true with the 16M and the Speciale Aperta, less so with this twin turbocharged 488 Pista. It's a lovely roar, but I wouldn't exactly call it musical. The 16M was made in 2009 and they made 499 of those. Then in 2014 and 15 they made the 458 Speciale Aperta, again 499. And then from 2019 until 2020 they made the Pista Spiders. Your guess is as good as mine as to how many have been made. They're not individually numbered, and also given Ferrari's current predilection for banging out models, I suspect there's a lot more of these around than there are its predecessors. What I do know is that this is the 50th open-top Ferrari made. Now, as you know, I spec'd this car from scratch, and I am unbelievably pleased with how it has turned out. It has exceeded my wildest dreams about how good this car looks in the flesh. When you see it on a sunny day or when the winter sun is low like it is today, it just looks fabulous. That Grigio Ferro main paintwork, and then with a Nero Stellato and gold stripe, it's just such a classy machine, not forgetting of course that I also have the Cioccolato Alcantara interior, which I appreciate can be a bit of a Marmite thing, but I think it suits the colour scheme of this car perfectly, and I love it. Two things I wish I'd done, if I could go back and respec it, is I would have made the rings on this centre spine here, I would have made the outer rings in gold, just to have matched that gold theme, and I think I would have also put the rev counter in either gold or brown, again link in with the interior. I just went for the classic black, but it probably would have been a nice personalising touch to maybe have it gold. What do you think? So what do I like about this car? Well, obviously the exterior styling of the Pista and the Pista Spider is quite superb. It is so aggressive, and there's so many interesting shapes and vents and vinny things and curves. It is a real event to stand in front of it and just look at it, let alone see it driving by. it is a masterpiece. I love the interior, and I love the way that the brown sits next to the gloss carbon. I knew it would look good. It is magnificently fast when you really wind it up, which you can't really do on the road. They say a lot of modern supercars are too fast for the road, and none more so than this. It is utterly bonkers. It takes your breath away, it really does. I actually quite like the fact that at low speed it makes quite a lot of noise. There's a lot of low rumbling and fizzing and, you know, deep grunting that occurs at sort of town speeds, which is nice because it does make it feel like a proper snarling animal. And that's what you want. You don't want the Euro legislation to eliminate entirely the sounds of these cars. And what Ferrari has done, although they've sacrificed it at the high end and it's not a musical car by any stretch of the imagination, they've really tuned the low end to be a bit more of an event, and you can hear this thing coming for miles. I obviously absolutely love the gold wheels. That was the best possible decision. They make me smile every time I look at it. And also I'm a big fan of the fact that unlike the 458 Speciale Aperta, you can put the roof up or down whilst you're still moving. And that makes a big difference in terms of everyday usability. What do I dislike about the car? Well, of course, it's many of the things that I disliked about the 458 and the 488, because of course it's pretty much the same platform. I don't like the archaic two screens that you operate with two different types of buttons. That is still horrendous, and it means you don't access many of the functions of the car while you're moving, because it would be dangerous. Obviously I don't like the indicators, but then that's a given. It was the same for the 458, it was the same for the 488 GTB. I also didn't like the brakes when I first got it, and it required an awful lot of bedding in to actually get the brakes to operate properly. If you buy a track-orientated Ferrari with ceramic brakes, you expect them to work immediately and perfectly, and I'm afraid the ones in this car simply didn't. I needed to do an awful lot of hard braking to get this car to perform the way that I think it should do, and now it does. But really, it should have been done from the factory, as it is with Porsche. One thing I can report is that the Pista Spider is nowhere near as special as the 458 Speciale Aperta. It does not have the same zing, it doesn't give you the same electric responses, and most importantly, it doesn't give you the winky fizzage that the 458 does. But one of the most disappointing aspects of this car is the steering. It's obviously electric, but it is almost entirely lifeless. You do not get any of the sensations that you get in the 458 Speciale, and it does not give you any satisfactory feel about what's going on the road. And that's a big disappointment. Coming from Ferraris of old, where you would drive them on your fingertips, there is no magic in the steering of this car at all. Obviously, it wouldn't be a Car Guys episode without me mentioning the horrendous stop-start, which of course, sadly now, for all modern Ferraris, means you cannot turn it off entirely. You have to turn it off every single time. Every time you get in the car, every time you go off for a drive, you have to remember to turn it off, or it will cut out at some point on your journey. I hate that! Oh, the turning circle of this car isn't very good. I know you probably guessed that because it's a track version, but it is shockingly bad. But I have to say, so far, the enjoyment levels of owning this car have been pretty high. It's enormously competent. It can be used every day. It's beautiful. It's incredibly fast. It does pretty much everything you want from a supercar. One advantage over the 488 platform over the 458 is it does feel a lot more solid. It feels more stuck to the road, whether that's larger rubber or dynamics. You do feel a lot more sucked to the road than you do in a 458. There isn't that dancey, boaty feel that you get with the 458. It is a lot more hunkered down. That, of course, also makes it feel heavier, so it does feel a heavier car than the 458. But when you're threading through some twisty roads, as I'm doing right now, it does give you a lot more confidence. I'm not getting that much feel through the steering, but the car itself feels sure-footed. The biggest problem of the 488 Pista is the 458 Speciale, because it shows you what you can have. Oh, there's an owl just flew straight across the car. Lovely. Morning, Mr. Owl. So nearly 3,000 miles in, and it has been a glorious experience so far. Few little wrinkles, but nothing that has put me off this car, nothing that has made me think for an instant that I would want to get rid of it. As far as I'm concerned, this car is staying forever, and I know some of you are skeptical about that. Despite the fact that it was very expensive, and despite the fact that it's got custom paintwork and it is personal to me because I created it from scratch, I don't feel at all precious about it. I do not want to keep it locked up in a garage. I am quite happy to drive it to the ends of the earth. I think it might have to be time for some beans, ladies and gentlemen. Oh yes. So now what we're going to do is we're going to answer your questions. So thank you very much. You all sent me loads of questions on Instagram and YouTube. So first question up, after owning the 458 Speciale, does the muted exhaust of the 488 Pista Spider bother you? Yes, it does. It's not as good. I quite like the growl, and I would have to say that although it's not a great noise, I've got no plans whatsoever to upgrade the exhaust and put an aftermarket exhaust on it. Where can you use this car to its full ability? Simple answer, the track, or maybe Scotland. Does it give you that special tingle? Good question. Not as much as you think. It gives me a special tingle because I appreciate how beautiful it is, and it is a brand new Ferrari, and it is the best variant of the Pista. So you do get a bit of a tingle, but not quite as much as you do with the Aperta. If you were forced to keep just one, which would it be? 458 Aperta or 488 Pista Spider? Obviously, Robert, the 458 Aperta. It's just a more special car. Will the Pista Spider hold its value? Well, no. I don't think anything's going to hold its value from now on, but I think this one will hold its value perhaps more than the standard Pista and more than any 488 GTB or Spider. How has the front number plate stayed on? They seem susceptible for falling off. Well, yes they do, and I have noticed that, but you're right, this one has stayed firmly stuck on, which when you're traveling through France is something of a relief. Why didn't you ask a YouTuber to spec your car? It's all the rage at the moment. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. That's not a trend that I want to see continuing at all. How many of these cars do you think Ferrari made? I probably would guess somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200. Would you take it on a track one day? Yep, absolutely I would. I'm not precious about it enough not to take it on track, and I am very interested to know what it would be like to explore the limits of this car. I think it would be quite fun. Is it everything you expected it to be? Do you know what? Yes, I think it is. It's beautiful, it's fast, it's a bit numb, and it feels a little bit more mass-produced than perhaps previous generations. So yeah, I actually think it's spot on to what I expected it to be. Do you worry about vandalism in public places? I've sort of conditioned myself not to worry about that. I think if you do worry about it, you would never take the car out. And so the vandals or the idiots or the morons, as I like to call them, they would win then. If people's behaviour dictates the way you behave, then they've won, and I wouldn't want to give them that satisfaction. Does this car have Apple CarPlay? No, it does not. Why? Because with Ferrari it costs £2,000. How much hate do you get on the road? Do you know what? None. I haven't experienced any hate whatsoever with this car. Is it true that you've got to keep this car on a trickle charger, and that if the battery goes dead, it will cost £8,000? I'm not sure about £8,000, but it is certainly true that my Ferrari dealer went out of their way to say that you should trickle charge it every night. Now, I haven't strictly done that, and nothing's happened, but they did make that specific point. What's the most ludicrously priced option that you could have had? Well, generally it's the paint. Paint on Ferraris appears to be made out of some magical pixie dust that costs a gazillion pounds per litre. Paint now is by far the most expensive option. It is not uncommon to spend £20,000 on paint for a car. And you can go a lot more bonkers than that if you choose a unique bespoke colour. Bear in mind, on this car, not only did I have the classic Grigio Ferro, which would have cost this much, I also had the stripe in 2 different special colours, which cost this much, and of course, stupidly, or perhaps incredibly cleverly, I also had painted shields, and they're this much. So the paint on this car added up to exactly this much, which I agree is eye-watering, but when you look at the car, it's worth every penny. If it was your only car, could you daily it? Absolutely yes. Ferrari has now become so adept at creating more reliable, more robust cars that absolutely you could use this every day, no problem whatsoever. How is it different to the 488 GTB? Well, it's a question of everything being dialed up. The responses, the speed, the steering, the directness, all of those things are probably increased by about 15%. When you're on the track, the difference is enormous. The Pista makes the 488 GTB feel like a German taxi. How often do people try to race you? Not that often. I'm quite surprised. I think maybe because this is in a more subtle colour, people don't really realise what it is. Maybe it's because of where I am in the country, so being in the New Forest, there tend not to be that many crazy racers. No, I don't get anyone trying to race me at all, for which I'm very grateful. How is the stereo? Absolutely rubbish. But frankly, who cares? Because I very rarely listen to it. Do you worry about the residual value and putting miles on it? No, I'm just having fun driving it. I don't care about the value. I don't care whether it's up or down. I'm just having fun driving the car. Do you wash it yourself, or is it best done by a professional? Well, in this case, I think it's best done by a professional. So Jake at First Choice Detailing, he tends to do this car exclusively. I never try and wash it myself. Is it because it's PPF'd? Not really. Is it because it's very expensive paintwork and painted shields? Yeah, probably. Will the Pista be the last new Ferrari that I ever buy? Very interesting question, and I think I'll leave that for its own entire episode. Has your penis got smaller since you bought it? It's just not possible to be smaller, mate. Is the noise as good as your Speciale? Of course not. Is it as much fun as your 355 Spider? No. No, the 355 Spider is more fun. This is faster, more competent, more reliable, probably less costly to fix, but the 355 has charm and character and passion and bravado, and it surprises you, and it's wonderful. What's the difference between tailor-made and Atelier? Good question. I wish I knew. I think tailor-made is when you actually create options that haven't been made before, i.e. different, unique paint or unique stripes. Atelier is just where you go to Italy and you do a sort of more enhanced speccing process that you would do at the dealer. Is it a babe magnet? Well, obviously not, because I'm sat in it. How much was the windscreen repair? It was this much, which is scandalous. It's just a windscreen. What happens at the end of your free 7-year servicing? Do you suddenly get a really big bill on the 8th year? No. All that happens is that you have to start paying for servicing. Did you choose the Spider to make it easier to access the McDonald's window for future videos? No. No, that didn't occur to me actually. When I was choosing a Spider, access to McDonald's was not the prime requisite. Do you drive it the most with the roof up or down? Well, at the moment, because it's very, very cold, I tend to drive with the roof up, but as with the 718 Spider, I prefer to drive it with the roof down as much as possible. And certainly when I was on my Alps road trip, I hardly had the roof up at all. I'm driving it with the roof up at the moment because I want you to be able to hear me, but I'll put it down in a second and you can see exactly what it's like with the roof down. Bring it down to about 30 miles an hour. Here we go. Rear lid pops up. Whoa, blast of cold air as the roof opens. Whew. And then straight back down again. 14 seconds, boom. The best roof in the business. So with the roof down, obviously it's a bit chillier, it's a bit noisier, but look at it. It is fantastic. All the joy of a Ferrari, but you can experience everything noisier, smellier, better. And yes, you do still feel flex in the chassis. Remember, this isn't a carbon tub, so you do still feel flex. You see, that is what the Spider is all about. With the top down, everything is magnified. You just feel so much more connected to the drive. Oh. And I don't think the sound is as bad as people say. I mean, it is still a lovely roar, like an F40. Instantaneous gear changes, we don't say enough about that. We sort of take it for granted now, but it's a thing of wonder. Yes, you have to change up more quickly than you do in a naturally aspirated car, which is a bit annoying. And yes, it doesn't sound as good, but there's still a very satisfying bellow that you get from this car. Listen to it, listen. You'd think the Pista would be way too hard for roads like this, but it's not. Even though this is the track variant of the 488, with the bumpy road setting and with the way that the car's set up, it copes with rough roads like this, no problem whatsoever. Oh, so good. You've got all that power, you've got all that ability inspired by F1 tech, and then no roof so that you can enjoy it even more. So there you go, those are your questions. I hope you enjoyed my answers. They were as honest and as spontaneous as I could manage. Now it's time to get back to Car Guys HQ, have a nice cup of tea. If you like what we're doing on the Car Guys, please subscribe, leave comments and likes, and there'll be another Car Guys episode along next week.